Rafael Nadal watched from courtside as his compatriot achieved something historic. And when Carlos Alcaraz walked off Rod Laver Arena as the youngest man ever to complete the career Grand Slam, Rafa was waiting. The embrace happened quickly. The conversation was brief. But what the 22-time Grand Slam champion said to the newly crowned legend in those private moments reveals something profound about mentorship, about greatness, and about how champions really think when nobody's listening. This wasn't just congratulations. Couldn't pick up the words. Alcaraz had just beaten Novak Djokovic in 4 sets. The 117 combined ATP titles between them, 92 belonging to Nadal, 25 to Alcaraz, came together in that embrace. 2 Spanish champions separated by a generation, but connected by something that goes beyond nationality or tennis. Later, in an interview with Marca, Alcaraz revealed what they discussed. And it wasn't what anyone expected. Rafa congratulated me, and we talked a little about the match, Alcaraz explained. About how well Novak started, how difficult it was. I told him that tactically, I started in a way that didn't work. I was playing too straight, and he said he saw it that way too. Read that again. Moments after completing the career Grand Slam, moments after achieving something only 5 other men in the Open era have ever done, moments after securing his place in tennis history, Alcaraz and Nadal weren't talking about the magnitude of the achievement. They weren't celebrating the historic milestone. They were breaking down tactics, analyzing what went wrong in the first set, discussing technical details, about the work, the craft, the endless pursuit of doing it better. Nadal saw something in that first set that bothered him. Alcaraz was playing too straight, not using the court properly, making it easier for Djokovic to control points. And even though Carlos eventually figured it out, and won convincingly, Rafa still needed to mention it. Still needed to make sure Alcaraz understood what went wrong tactically even in a match he won. That's coaching at the highest level. That's mentorship that goes beyond just congratulations. Because anyone can say great job, well done. But taking the time to discuss the technical failings, even in a historic victory, that's what separates legends from everyone else. Alcaraz went on. We didn't talk much because I had my own things to do, and he was leaving. It was a very special moment to hug Rafa with the trophy in my hand. The brevity of the conversation makes it even more meaningful. They didn't have time for a long debrief. Alcaraz had media obligations and celebrations. Nadal was leaving. But in those few minutes they had, they focused on the tennis. The tactics. The technical aspects that could be improved next time. That's the mindset that created 22 Grand Slam champions, and is creating the next one. Never satisfied. Always analyzing. Always looking for what could be better, even when everything went right. The context of Nadal being at the final matters enormously. He'd been invited as an honored guest for the Night of Champions event. He'd participated in the on-court celebration, honoring tennis legends. And then he stayed to watch the final, sitting courtside with Ken Rosewall and other Australian Open dignitaries. Both finalists acknowledged him during their speeches. Djokovic made a joke about how weird it felt to see Nadal in the stands instead of across the net. You want to play, Rafa? Djokovic had quipped during the match when Alcaraz was hitting impossible shots. Nadal laughed from his seat, the moment captured on broadcast and going viral immediately. Alcaraz thanked Nadal for being there, for supporting him, for representing Spanish tennis, and serving as inspiration. The mutual respect was obvious, but the real connection happened privately, away from microphones and cameras. That's where the truth comes out. That's where you learn what actually matters to champions. And what matters, apparently, is the tactical details, the technical adjustments, the continuous pursuit of playing better tennis, even when you're already the best in the world. Nadal's observation about Alcaraz playing too straight in the first set is particularly insightful because it identifies the exact problem that let Djokovic dominate early. When you play straight to Djokovic, when you don't use angles and make him move wide, you're playing into his strengths. He can camp out in the middle of the court and redirect everything you hit at him. Alcaraz realized this himself during the match. You could see the adjustments starting in the second set. More cross-court shots, more angles, more use of the full court width. And suddenly Djokovic was the one struggling, chasing balls wide, unable to set up in his preferred position. But the fact that Nadal noticed it from the stands shows the level at which he still watches and analyzes tennis. He's not just a casual observer enjoying retirement. He's still studying the game, still seeing the tactical nuances that separate good from great, still thinking like a coach even when he's sitting as a spectator. And Alcaraz recognized the value of that observation. He didn't brush it off as unnecessary criticism after a victory. He engaged with it, acknowledged it, admitted he'd made that tactical error early before adjusting. That receptiveness to feedback, even in triumph, is part of what makes him coachable and what will allow him to keep improving. The timing of this conversation is also significant. Coming right after such an emotional victory, most people would be too overwhelmed to think clearly about tactics. They'd be celebrating, crying, hugging everyone in sight, basking in the accomplishment. But Alcaraz had enough presence of mind to discuss tennis strategy. An intense experience shows maturity beyond his years. It also reveals how champions think differently. They don't completely lose themselves in emotion, even during the biggest moments. Part of their brain is always analyzing, processing, learning. That ability to stay partially detached and analytical, even while experiencing intense emotion, is what allows them to perform consistently under pressure. Nadal taught Alcaraz that, whether intentionally or through example, how to be present in the moment while also maintaining enough mental distance to learn from it. How to celebrate victories while also identifying areas for improvement. How to appreciate what you've accomplished while staying hungry for what comes next. The phrase, "I told him that tactically I started in a way that didn't work," is revealing too. Because it shows Alcaraz taking ownership of the tactical error rather than crediting Samuel Lopez or his team with identifying it. He figured it out himself during the match. That self-awareness and ability to self-correct mid-match is elite-level tennis intelligence. And by sharing that with Nadal, by being honest about what he got wrong, Alcaraz was opening himself up for feedback and mentorship. He wasn't pretending he'd played perfectly. He was admitting the flaw and allowing Nadal to confirm his analysis and potentially offer additional insights. That vulnerability from someone who just won a historic final takes confidence. Lesser players might feel the need to project perfection after such a triumph. Alcaraz is secure enough to acknowledge imperfection, even in victory. Nadal's response, he said he saw it that way too, validates Alcaraz's analysis while also subtly reinforcing the lesson. Nadal could have just said "great win" and moved on. Instead, he engaged with the tactical discussion, confirmed the observation, and made sure Alcaraz understood the issue clearly. That's mentorship. Not lecturing, not telling someone what they did wrong, but confirming what they already figured out and reinforcing the lesson through engagement rather than instruction. The relationship between Nadal and Alcaraz has evolved beautifully over the years. When Carlos was a kid, Rafa was the legend he idolized. When Carlos became a professional, Rafa was the standard he measured himself against. Now that Carlos is a multiple Grand Slam champion and world number one, Rafa is the elder statesman offering wisdom and perspective. But it's never been a formal mentor-mentee relationship with structured coaching or regular sessions. It's been organic, natural, based on mutual respect and shared Spanish heritage and love of tennis. The conversations happen when they happen, like this one after the Australian Open final. Brief, focused, meaningful. That might actually be more valuable than formal mentorship. Because it's Alcaraz's choice to seek out Nadal's insights. It's not required or expected. When he shares what went wrong tactically, he's doing it because he genuinely wants Nadal's perspective, not because he has to report to a coach. And Nadal offers observations when he has them, not because he's obligated to, but because he sees something worth mentioning. That voluntary nature of the exchange makes it more authentic and probably more impactful. The physical embrace that accompanied this conversation matters too. Alcaraz specifically mentioned how special it was to hug Rafa with the trophy in his hand. That image, two Spanish champions, generations apart, sharing a moment of genuine connection in the aftermath of historic achievement, will be remembered as one of the defining images of this Australian Open. It represents continuity, the passing of the torch, while also honoring what came before. Nadal built Spanish tennis into a powerhouse with his 22 Grand Slams. Alcaraz is carrying that forward with his own historic achievements. And in that hug, both past and future came together. The brevity of their conversation. "We didn't talk much because I had my own things to do and he was leaving," also speaks to the respect they have for each other's time and space. Nadal didn't monopolize Alcaraz after the victory. He said what needed to be said and got out of the way so Carlos could celebrate with his team and handle his obligations. That restraint is important. Some former champions can't help but make moments about themselves, even when they're supposed to be celebrating someone else's achievement. Nadal kept it brief and meaningful. Congratulated, observed, validated, and stepped back. Alcaraz's appreciation for that moment, calling it very special, shows he understood the significance of having Nadal there and having that conversation. It wasn't just another congratulatory message from another tennis legend. It was the Spanish tennis legend offering tactical insights to the next Spanish tennis legend moments after a historic achievement. The fact that they discussed Djokovic's strong start is also interesting, because Alcaraz could have been defensive about losing the first set, could have downplayed it or made excuses. Instead, he acknowledged that Novak started incredibly well, and that his own tactics early on made it worse by playing into Djokovic's strengths. That honesty about what happened, even when it reflects poorly on his initial game plan, shows maturity and a genuine desire to learn rather than just defend his ego. Champions can afford to be honest about mistakes because their achievements speak for themselves. They don't need to protect their image by pretending they played perfectly. Nadal's comment that he saw it that way too, from the stands, is particularly valuable for Alcaraz, because it confirms that his self-analysis was accurate, that his ability to diagnose problems mid-match and make corrections is reliable, that his tennis IQ is at the level where he can trust his own tactical instincts. Having that validation from someone like Nadal reinforces Alcaraz's confidence in his own analytical abilities. Next time he identifies a tactical issue during a match, he'll trust that analysis even more because Nadal confirmed he was seeing it correctly. The contrast between what happened publicly and what happened privately is also worth noting. Publicly, there were speeches and celebrations and photo opportunities. The trophy presentation with all its pageantry. The interviews with reporters asking the same questions. All of that is important and part of the experience. But privately, in a quiet corner away from cameras, two champions had a real conversation about real tennis. About what worked and what didn't. About how to be better next time. That's where the actual learning happens. That's where improvement comes from. Alcaraz chose to share that private moment in his interview with Marca. He didn't have to. He could have kept it to himself. But by sharing it, he gave us a window into how champions actually think and communicate with each other when they're not performing for cameras. And what we see is exactly what you'd expect from people who've achieved what they've achieved. Focused on the work. Analyzing the details. Never satisfied even in victory. Always looking for ways to improve. That's the mentality that creates legends. Not talent, not natural ability, but this relentless focus on doing the job better every single time regardless of the outcome. Do you think Nadal's tactical observation will help Alcaraz in future matches against top opponents? Is this kind of private mentorship more valuable than formal coaching? And what does this conversation reveal about what it really takes to achieve greatness? Drop your take in the comments, and let's discuss whether the technical details matter more than the celebrations. Subscribe because the Nadal-Alcaraz relationship continues to evolve and will cover every meaningful interaction. Hit that like button if you think this conversation shows what championship mentality really looks like. Always focused on getting better, even in historic victories. The broader implication of this conversation extends beyond just Alcaraz's development. It reveals something fundamental about how knowledge transfers between generations in elite sports. Nadal isn't Alcaraz's formal coach. He doesn't travel with him. He doesn't get paid to offer advice. But his influence might be more profound than any hired coach because it comes from genuine desire to help rather than professional obligation. Think about what Nadal gains from this interaction. Nothing of helping someone from his country and his sport reach their potential. That purity of motive makes the advice more valuable because Alcaraz knows Nadal has no agenda beyond wanting him to succeed. Compare that to the sometimes complicated dynamics between players and paid coaches. There's always at least some element of transaction in those relationships. The coach needs the player to succeed partly because it impacts their own reputation and career prospects. That doesn't make the advice bad, but it does color the dynamic. With Nadal, there's no professional stake. Just the wisdom of someone who's been exactly where Alcaraz is now and wants to share what he learned. That hits differently. It penetrates deeper. It stays with you longer. The tactical point itself, playing too straight to Djokovic, is also a lesson Alcaraz will carry forever. Not just about that specific match, but about approaching opponents generally. Every player has preferred positions and scenarios. Understanding how your tactical choices feed into or disrupt those preferences is advanced tennis strategy that takes years to fully grasp. Nadal helping Alcaraz see that connection between shot selection and opponent comfort, accelerates his strategic development. Next time Carlos faces a player who camps in the middle of the court, he'll remember this conversation and immediately look for angles rather than going straight. That's the kind of learning that transforms good players into great ones. Not just knowing what to do, but understanding why at a deep level. Nadal gave Alcaraz the why, not just the what. That's the difference between information and wisdom. The public perception of this interaction is also worth examining. When the story came out about what they discussed, tennis fans reacted with appreciation for getting this inside look at how champions communicate. Social media was full of comments praising both Nadal for offering tactical insights and Alcaraz for being receptive to them even in the immediate aftermath of a historic victory. That reaction tells us something about what fans actually want from sports. Yes, they want to see great performances and historic achievements. But they also want to understand the human element, the relationships, the learning, the behind-the-scenes reality of what it takes to be great. This conversation between Nadal and Alcaraz gave fans exactly that. A glimpse into the real work of tennis. The constant analysis and improvement that happens even when cameras aren't rolling. That authenticity resonates because it's so different from the polished, media-managed image most athletes project. Alcaraz's willingness to share this private moment with marca readers shows his own authenticity. He could have kept it vague, said something generic like, "Rafa congratulated me, and we talked about the match." Instead, he gave specifics, revealed the tactical discussion, showed people what the conversation actually contained. That transparency builds connection with fans. It makes Alcaraz more relatable even as he's achieving things that put him in rarefied air. He's still human, still learning, still making tactical errors that legends have to point out. That vulnerability makes him easier to root for. The evolution of Nadal's relationship with Spanish tennis, more broadly, also provides context. He's always been generous with younger Spanish players, offering encouragement, making himself available when his schedule allows. Understanding that his success created a platform that comes with responsibilities beyond just his own career. With Alcaraz specifically, there's been extra investment because Carlos represents the future of Spanish tennis in a way no other player does. He has the talent and personality and results to carry the torch Nadal carried for 2 decades. Ensuring Carlos develops properly, avoiding pitfalls and maximizing his potential, matters for Spanish tennis beyond just Alcaraz's individual success. So Nadal's tactical observations after the final aren't just about helping one player. They're about stewarding Spanish tennis through a generational transition, making sure the standards Nadal set, the work ethic, the tactical sophistication, the mental toughness, carry forward to the next era. Alcaraz's comment that it was very special to hug Rafa with the trophy in hand speaks to the emotional significance of the moment for him personally. Because as a kid growing up in Spain, Nadal was the tennis player, the one everyone wanted to emulate, the standard of excellence. Now Alcaraz has matched or exceeded many of Nadal's early career achievements, winning Grand Slams faster, completing the career slam younger, reaching world number 1 earlier. In many ways, he's already surpassed what Nadal did at the same age. But rather than creating rivalry or jealousy, it's created mentorship and mutual respect. Nadal is genuinely proud of what Alcaraz is accomplishing. Alcaraz genuinely reveres what Nadal achieved and what he represents. That dynamic is healthy for both of them and for tennis. The brief nature of the conversation, necessitated by Alcaraz's obligations and Nadal's departure, actually made it more impactful. When you only have a few minutes, you focus on what matters most. No small talk, no wasted words, just the essential message that needed to be delivered. Nadal congratulated him. They discussed the tactical issue. Nadal confirmed Carlos's analysis. That's it. Short, focused, meaningful. Everything a conversation between 2 champions needs to be, and nothing it doesn't. That efficiency of communication is itself a lesson. Champions don't have time for meandering discussions. They get to the point. They say what needs to be said. They move on. Alcaraz is learning that too, both from Nadal's example and through his own increasingly busy schedule as world number 1. The way Alcaraz recounted the conversation also shows his respect for Nadal. He didn't embellish, didn't claim Nadal said more than he did, just reported it accurately and let the significance speak for itself. That journalistic precision in describing the interaction shows maturity and understanding that the moment was important enough not to exaggerate. Looking forward, this conversation will be one of many that shapes Alcaraz's career. Not through dramatic transformation or revelation, but through small accumulated insights that add up over time. Every conversation with Nadal, every tactical observation, every bit of wisdom shared contributes to Carlos's development in ways that might not be visible immediately, but matter enormously over a career. And that's ultimately what mentorship is. Not one big lesson that changes everything, but many small lessons that compound and accumulate until you've internalized an entire philosophy of excellence without even realizing it happened. Nadal is teaching Alcaraz how to be a champion not through lectures or formal sessions, but through moments like this. Brief conversations about tactics, leading by example, being present for important moments, offering insights when they're relevant. That informal, organic mentorship might be more effective than any structured program could be. The fact that this conversation happened at all, that Nadal was there, that they had time to talk, that Alcaraz was receptive to tactical feedback immediately after a historic win, speaks to the unique circumstances that allowed their relationship to develop. Not every champion has access to a legend from their country who cares enough to attend their finals and offer observations. Alcaraz is fortunate, and he knows it. The appreciation in his voice when he described hugging Rafa with the trophy shows he understands how special this relationship is. Not taking it for granted, not assuming it will always be there, cherishing the moments when they connect. That gratitude keeps him humble, even as he achieves things that would make lesser players arrogant. Because Nadal is a constant reminder that there's always more to learn, always ways to improve, always someone who's accomplished more and can offer perspective you don't have. And Nadal benefits too. Not materially, but psychologically and emotionally. Watching Alcaraz succeed with insights he helped provide has to be satisfying. Knowing that Spanish tennis is in good hands after he retires completely. Seeing the next generation embrace the values and standards he established. That's the legacy every great athlete wants. Not just their own achievements, but the impact they had on those who came after. The knowledge they passed on. The standards they set. The example they provided. Through conversations like the one after the Australian Open final, Nadal is building that legacy one tactical observation at a time. And Alcaraz is honoring it by being receptive, implementing the insights, and achieving things that make Rafa proud. That's how greatness perpetuates itself. Through moments of genuine connection and knowledge transfer between generations. Through brief conversations about tactics that matter more than lengthy speeches about inspiration. Through champions who care enough to help the next champions reach their potential. Do you think Nadal's tactical observation will help Alcaraz in future matches against top opponents? Is this kind of private mentorship more valuable than formal coaching? And what does this conversation reveal about what it really takes to achieve greatness? Drop your take in the comments, and let's discuss whether the technical details matter more than the celebrations. Subscribe because the Nadal-Alcaraz relationship continues to evolve, and we'll cover every meaningful interaction. Hit that like button if you think this conversation shows what championship mentality really looks like. Always focused on getting better, even in historic victories.